What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. And I'm also the CEO of the Off the Ball Network. And today's show, we're going to dive into the San Antonio Spurs. It's been a tough season, but there could be, a couple bright spots coming forward in the summertime. So I'm here with my guy, Walker Bailey. What's going on, Walker?
Not much. Been a long year, but we're getting to the end now, and so it's time to start talking about the important stuff, which is
the important stuff.
Off season.
The off season is what it is about, and like you see in the background, you see that tall guy who is above Walker's head, and the not so tall guy that's behind me. That is Scoot Henderson. There's a lot to go. There's a lot to potentially be happy about. So before we go, let's just talk about the season as a whole. Obviously, a rough season. 19-56 at the moment on a 4-game losing streak. It's been a tough year, but like you said, there could be some positive at the end. But overall, what's been the feeling around this basketball team? Forget about what's going to potentially happen all season, but just what's been the feeling with you and the Spurs Nation with how this team has looked this season?
It's been weird, I think. You have a fan base that I think really doesn't understand what it's like to have to rebuild. Because a lot of your fans really have just lived most of their basketball fandom as fans of a contender.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I watch the league as a whole, you see it, you kind of know what it's like. And so you're kind of like, well, I guess it's my turn to live it. But
now you know how it feels to be a Knicks fan for a year.
Yeah, right.
As far as being garbage.
But I don't know. Like you have people like we were talking last night, like there's people that think like, this team's actually not bad. They've just like they're sabotaging so that they can play. And I'm like, no, like this team just is really bad. Like it's
bad.
It is. It's really bad. There's very little talent. I think that a lot of people then move and they're like, well, like we're doing the player development thing. Like it's no, and it's like no, it's okay to admit that probably none of these players are going to be on the team when they're good again.
Mm-hmm.
Save a select few. I think that like. Probably your player of the season, and this is going to sound crazy coming out of my mouth, but from a most improved standpoint, like Zach Collins looks like a dude.
Isn't Zach Collins has been hooping lately.
I know.
I thought he was. I was like, yo, I'm out on Zach Collins. He's always hurt. I never saw enough of him on the court to be like, yo, he could be a solid, an above average, starter or something. But he's definitely showed out.
Yeah, and he just fits the modern era type of big,
mm-hmm.
where he can handle it just enough. He can shoot the three. He can finish around the rim, which just by default makes him one of the Spurs' top 3 players because
he shoots it at a high clip, a nice clip, 38%.
Yeah,
he's healthy too, and that's the number one thing because he's been ravaged with injuries with his career, especially in Portland. So we finally get to see a healthy version of him, and he's playing solid. He's on a bad team too, so you get to see him more. So that's
and you get to see him with a workload too, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're almost like even now it's like, oh, he stayed healthy and he's also kind of carrying like third scoring option type rep.
So. He's look at and just to go over his games. This is the most games he's started. And the most games he's played since his second year in the league. So he played 28 games last year and 11 games the year before. So what that is, trying to do my math, 39 games the previous 2 years combined. And that's not a lot of basketball.
He's played what, like 65?
And he's played 60 games, started 23 games, and he's playing, roughly 23 minutes a game. The most he's played since his whole career, essentially. Except for that 11 game. He started every game. But he only played 11 games, so he averaged 26 minutes. This is the most minutes he's pretty much played his whole career.
Yeah, and so, it makes for an intriguing conversation because he's going to be a free agent this offseason. And there's
young too, 25.
Yeah, but there's someone else that got put on my radar that makes a lot of sense for the Spurs that I think is ready for a larger workload as a big that would be able to play with Wemby. That's also going to be an unrestricted free agent this summer.
Mm-hmm.
Count me in on the Spurs signing Naz Reid. He's like 23. He's like 23, I think. I just think the ceiling is a little bit higher. Like I think that, and I don't remember. Shout out to Austin. I'm pretty sure he said this in the Spaces last night. I think like in his starts in Minnesota where Cat was out, he averaged like 20 and 9. And so like he basically like as the workload gets higher, Naz gets better. And so I think that's a dude where you have a ton of cap space. You don't have anybody to extend. Like, you have to spend the money somewhere or some money somewhere. Why not just go give Naz Reid, like, go be the highest bidder for Naz Reid? And
Naz Reid's going to make a team very happy.
Right. And so, with Collins being really good, I think, and I do think the Spurs will re-sign Collins just because it's how the organization is. They like to reward their guys. But it's just different now. This isn't giving Patty Mills 4 for 50 or 4 for 60 on a contender. Like, this isn't just like retaining guys that are on a contending roster. You're having to rebuild a roster. So I think that'll be an intriguing one, is what they do with Collins versus finding a guy like Nas in the offseason. So I think that those are interesting. I think Keldon's been disappointing this year, to be honest. I think that people were hoping that with DeJounte gone that he would get to expand his scoring bag. And really just like, he just looks like someone who's so unsure of himself, doesn't really know what he has or what he's capable of, what's going to work for him, what's not going to work for him. Some games, can't miss from deep. He's shooting it from everywhere. And other games, his shot is so woefully off that he'll be open and won't even look to shoot. He'll just immediately put his head down and try to get to the rack. And so, I don't know. You run into a lot there. It's just like, well, what do you do with him? Because if the ping pong balls bounce a certain way, then you're looking at potentially like, we're drafting 3. Well, if you're drafting 3, you're probably drafting a wing. And even if you draft Amon, you're drafting a 6'7" guy. So, you're drafting a big body, and you have Vassell still there. Sohan probably is already better than Keldon, which is a wild statement. Like, Sohan had 32 and 13 a couple games ago, and I was just like, that didn't feel like that was possible when the draft happened. So
Keldon's shooting is so up and down too, because if you just look at like the numbers, like he's been shooting better of late from 3, but then like just a month ago he was shooting like 20% from 3.
It's just who he is, man. It's just everything's always such a roller coaster with him, and it's nothing like, it's not like a attitude thing. Like, the attitude is there, the mentality is always there. It's who he is as a player, and I just don't think like that's a dude like, if you can flip him for another young player around that same age, even if it costs you some money, like they can fill another hole. Like, you have to think about it. Just because if you're potentially looking at having to draft a wing, someone is going to be the odd man out. You're not drafting a wing in the top 5 and telling him to come sit behind Keldon and Vassell and play 20 minutes a night. And like, Sohan's also there. Like, you're not going to tell that cat to just sit back and be the depth piece for a stretch. It's not going to happen. So I think that's something that you have to look at. Like, and I think Keldon's the odd wing out because if Vassell's a shooter and can create for himself a little bit, he can play the 2, which Keldon can't do. Keldon's not great at playing the 4. Like, he almost exclusively has to play the 3. And so I think you play Sohan at the 4 where he's really thrived this year. And then you plug a wing in at 3 and you just move with a younger, much cheaper 3. And if that's the case, maybe you try to flip and find some sort of point guard. Like, Trey's been really good. But I think Trey is almost exactly like his brother. I think he very much is going to thrive as a backup point guard on a contender.
Yeah, there's not a lot of ceiling with him. He kind of is what he is at this point.
No. Well, and that's another guy that's going into restricted free agency, and like, you're going to have to make a decision.
Offer sheet. Yeah, he's going to get an offer sheet for sure.
I think Trey is the type that's going to get, Tyus got, I think, 15. I think Trey's going to get like 12.
12 per, yeah. He's like a $12 million player,
yeah. Yeah, and so I think he's going to get like 12, and you're going to have to make a decision there. Like, do you want to give 12 to your backup point guard? I mean, you can. Like, that's not going to like cost. Like, that's not going to max you out.
Especially if the draft goes a certain way.
Yeah.
And if you wind up with Scoot, you're going to want to, that's going to be the face of your franchise. Let's be real, right? He's going to be the face of your franchise. And it's like, all right, we're going to pay. We like Trey. We like what he does. And he's been solid for us. But we're going to give him $12 million when we have, Scoot Henderson here, who is going to be our face of our franchise, is going to be the primary ball handler, So it's like, what we did? Did we just let him go? But you'd like him around, but that's going to be a situation if that were to happen.
Right. And so I do think that that's one of those things you have to weigh where it's like, all right, like, what do we do with Trey? What do we do with Keldon? Those are the two, in my mind, names wise.
Yeah. Because I think you eventually have to, because Vassell and Keldon, they don't have the ball handed to be like a primary ball handler.
And also, he's
they're too small to be a wing, a true, like, 3 or 4. So that might be a situation.
It's a very tradable contract. It's a $20 million annual, and it's decreasing in value every single year. So annually, he gets cheaper, and he's like 20. He's like 23, 24, maybe
23. Yeah, Keldon's 23.
So like that's an attractive trade piece for a better team.
Well, what great value, and that's the one thing you guys have always done, is getting the most value out of those picks. Like we're talking about Keldon, who was a late first-round pick, Trey's a second-round pick, and look, you guys are able to potentially flip late first-round picks and second-round picks to potentially get some assets in return potentially. Right. So that shows how good that you guys, bad season, but you guys still know how to develop.
Well, and how to pick them,
pick. That's important. And listen, I'm a Knicks fan. I get so frustrated because we've just blown pick after pick after pick and all that, and it's frustrating because I'm like, you don't always need the number one pick to develop a good team, and that's frustrating because it's like if we just got the right scout, it's possible because you guys do it, So it's like, well, why can't we pick something up from other teams and like Memphis and teams like that get late first and no matter where they pick, they find that the right guy.
Like Memphis's third scoring option or second scoring option, third best player is a second round pick.
Bain is their second option. Was the last pick in the first round.
Yeah,
look at the value in that.
100%. And that's also why too. Like I think even though next year's draft is a little weaker, the Spurs have the Raptors pick next year, and there's only a top 5 protection on that. So you're potentially looking at 2 lottery picks.
You're going to get that pick.
You're looking at 2 lottery picks next year, which I did have someone try to tell me last night that if the Spurs drafted Wemby, he would be worth like a LeBron-esque movement and win total, and I was like, you're drunk. They tried to tell me the Spurs would go
as far as like going to like 20 wins to like 40.
The Cavs went from 18 wins to or 17 wins.
They didn't make the playoffs the first 2 years of LeBron.
No, like they went from 17 wins to 35 wins in LeBron's rookie year, and I don't think Wemby's doing that to
it's almost team. Double.
Yeah, like
even when Melo did that, and Melo took the Denver from.
You're basically putting the expectation that Wemby is going to perform like a top 3 player of NBA, like in NBA history.
Do you think? See, and that's where that's going to be tough for him, because if he were a player from the States and all that, maybe he can handle it better because the attention, like Melo, LeBron, they had the attention from high school. And foreigner coming in, that might be a little bit more tougher to handle.
I mean, you worry about it, and also you think about it, like he came over here and squared off with Scoot, and essentially it was a glorified one-on-one game on national television in the middle of the summer, where everybody, like the NBA season wasn't happening.
They put all his games on the app. That's how big he got.
And he went dumb. Not only played, but went
shut out. Yeah,
dumb. Like he had 30.
It just popped up. Look, Wemby does it all because he had a game today.
Yeah, but he went nuts against the G League team, and Scoot played well too. But he did come over to the States and went to Vegas of all places, which is where showmanship goes, and he went and put on a show. So.
As far as with Scoot, this reminds me a lot. This draft, as far as the top 2 picks, all right, the top 2 picks I feel like are Scoot and is Wemby and Scoot, right? Yeah. I think it's similar to Zion and Ja. And I think what you're gonna get with Scoot is a guy like, I'm the number 1 pick every other year.
Yeah,
consensus, I'm the number 1 pick, and that's gonna be like Ja. He's going to have the little chip on his shoulder like, all y'all talk about is this French dude, and I know I'm better. So if you're the Spurs and let's say you guys get number 2 and Detroit gets number 1, you're going to get a player that's going to be like, I'm going to win Rookie of the Year. I'm trying to be an all-star. You're going to get yourself a player. That's why
his mentals,
his mental is different, and he has the NBA. He has NBA. It's like Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose an NBA body, and like if Derrick Rose could have come in out of high school, he would have went out of high school. Same thing with Scoot. Scoot could have been the. You think? Let's say this is still craziness. If Scoot was coming out of high school last year, he was allowed to. You think he's the number 1 pick?
Yeah,
I think he is.
I think he is.
I think Orlando's like, yeah. I think Paolo goes to, yeah. I think he would. I think he's that good. I think he's that good. He got hurt, so I think that affected his shooting and all that. But I still buy. I don't think he's going to be a great shooter, but I think he's going to be good enough that he's going to command respect, and he's just going to be able to do what he wants. Like it's going to be like Derrick Rose, like, you know, as far as like the development with the shooting and all that, where you're going to have to respect it enough, but he's going to be able to get to the hole. And he might be bigger than Derrick Rose, which is kind of crazy. So I think you get him at 2, you're going to get yourself a motivated player. And I think he's going to be just as marketable as Victor. Now, maybe not as make as much as money, you know, overall, but he's going to be as marketable as Victor is, because he's from the States too. So
his mentals are just like that's why like the whole Brandon Miller thing was going on recently. Like
I didn't believe any of that crap. I think that was just to stir something up because there was nothing because it's all years is 1-2 is, and people just had to create something just to like switch it up. Like they tried to do that in the last draft, you know, with Zion and Ja, you know, because remember it was supposed to be like him and it was Zion and RJ.
Right.
And then that tailed off. And then like, oh, it could still be RJ. And then people were with Hunter. And it's like, no, it's the 1-2 is Zion and Ja. Like, so just to create something, because there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm just like, yeah, like I'm pretty locked in on Scoot at 2. And then if you get Brandon Miller, like, okay, that's fine. It's not ideal, but that's a hell of a consolation.
You could use the boost too. Like, how's attendance wise with San Antonio?
But, you know, it's actually kind of funny. Like, they're gonna keep going to the games just because it's the only thing to do. Like, and so
but Scoop will definitely get you to be more invested.
The opener is sold out if either of those 2 guys gets picked. Like, the home opener is sold out. That's one of those where, like, honestly, the NBA wouldn't just be totally lost. Like, don't put them on opening night, but put them on like the Friday night and put like those games on like make them a doubleheader or something, or let them play against each other that Friday night.
Those 2, yeah, they should do that.
Do that and put it on ESPN. Everybody watches. Like, everybody's like, all right, shit, here we go.
All right, so let's get right into those guys and all that. What does life look like for the San Antonio Spurs if you get the number 1 pick and you draft Victor Wembanyama? What does a Spurs team look like next season?
I think that you can still this is where I really like to get, like, I think this is where you really get fun, and this team would be menacing defensively. I still think you go sign Naz Reid, and then you just play them at the same time, because Victor's already said, like, he's like, oh yeah, like I kind of want to be closer to like a 4, like positionless, like playing all over the place. Well, Naz can shoot it too. So then you can still space the floor, and we can just have length and bodies all over the floor and make it really hard to score. Keldon doesn't have to move at that point, or maybe he does, but like you could play those 2 bigs together, play Sohan on a wing, and then play a guard with Vassell and play a guard with Vassell. At that point, you're not scoring much because you don't have just a ton of shot makers on that team. But like Wemby's going to score, like Naz can knock down open shots. You know, Vassell and whether it be Keldon or Sohan that starts would be able to give you some buckets. You would have enough. Like, you would have enough to be just like, you're still going to be bad, but it would be fun to watch. And then you just kind of focus on, all right, now, like, after that, it's like, all right, we know Wemby's going to get buckets. He's the big. He's the face of the franchise. We got to go get a guard that can be a bucket getter. Like, that's...
You guys just have 1 first-round pick, right? That's the only pick you would have, right?
1 first round, and then they've got, like, they'll have, like, the 3rd pick of the 2nd round. And then they've got the Raptors' 2nd-round pick as well. So they'll have 2 seconds, which is dangerous because that's going to be, like, in the early 40s.
Yeah,
like
that's like a top 15 pick for you guys, and Yeah, you guys use second round picks and they turn into Hall of Famers.
That's the type of thing where like a Tarquavion Smith falls and they pick him up and it's like how
the hell? See, that's gonna happen because that's just how your guy's fortune is. You're gonna find that second round pick and he's gonna be there on your team for 15 years and he's gonna be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna get a point guard, you're gonna draft a point guard who's just gonna be solid. He's gonna be 15-8, and he's just gonna be like, how do you get a 15-8 guy in the 50th pick? My team can't even get a top 10 pick correct, and you guys are hitting on 40th, 5th picks. Like, it's just crazy. That's what frustrates me so much. Like, we can't even get top 10. We've hit on like late picks with like we're better with like late round picks, like Quickly and Mitch, but like top 10 picks. Don't give us top 10 picks no more.
No, like or else you're gonna end up with Frank Ntilikina. Like
back to back Frank, him and Knox. Like, I'm like, I remember that draft, not to get on the Knicks, but like I remember like I was like, yeah, we drafted from the right team, but the wrong player. Should have been SGA the whole time. We needed a guard. Even Kyle was telling us there should, SGA. Everyone was like SGA. Everybody wanted SGA on the Knicks. It just made sense, but no. Well, whatever. I digress.
Yep. There's your TED Talk.
That's my TED Talk. I get mad every time.
Yeah, but
when the Knicks lose in 5 in the playoffs, I'm going to go back to Frank Ntilikina and Kevin Knox. Those picks for setting us up for this disaster.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, man. Like, I think that you look at these, you hope that you can get 2 dudes out of this class. Mm-hmm. Like, you just hope that you hit one of the seconds. And then obviously you hope the ping pong balls bounce your way. I think it's 49 days now. I have a counter.
What does Victor mean for the not just on the court but off the court potentially for San Antonio? Is that like Tim Duncan level of or David Robinson level like change?
I think it's weird. Like I think it's you can almost draw and I hate to do this just because they're from the same place, but you can draw the direct line to Tony Parker. Like you bring this young French kid in who doesn't really know what the NBA is all about, and you're going to sell a bunch of his jerseys. Pop's going to ride his ass and be on his ass from the very jump just because he knows what the upside is. He's going to develop the shit out of him. Like, you're not going to settle for being a second option. You're going to become a monster. And so I just think it's like we were saying earlier, like for home openers sold out, ticket sales are up, jersey. Everybody wants Victor's jersey. It does a ton for, just marketing.
That's a top 10 jersey from the minute whatever team picks him, and that's a top 10 jersey off the jump.
Well, and then also what it does too is it puts money back in the owner's pockets, where even with the cap space available, your owner may be more incentivized to be like, you know what, like, yeah, there's a second or there's a bucket getter in free agency the next year. Like, we needed one of those, and we have all this cap space, because that's the other thing that people don't talk about enough. It's like, yeah, the Spurs are going to draft and develop guys, but like they're going to have double max cap space this offseason, and like they can, and like they'll have to spend some of it, or else the NBA is going to be like, all right, like, look,
yeah, they got a floor they got to reach.
Yeah, they're gonna have to. Well, they didn't hit the floor this year. They just redistributed the money.
All right, because if you don't get the floor, you have to distribute the money to the rest of the roster. Yeah, you're right.
They just gave all the other guys more. They're like, we're not doing it. We're
I forgot.
More. We're not gonna spend it.
I forgot you could do that. Yeah.
But yeah, and so they'll spend some this offseason, but.
Well, if they get Victor, I think they'll definitely be willing. Because if you're an owner, just naturally like, wow, we got the number 1 pick. We got this prospect who's the best prospect since maybe LeBron James. Like, that gets you motivated. It's like, oh, or maybe we got something here. Boom, and that'll make you. But hopefully, it doesn't make too many like irrational moves, like go crazy, sign someone.
That doesn't really feel like Spurs.
Yeah, and that's not Spurs like, but you never know. Like you might,
sign someone just because. Point being, I think that you see like some pieces get added where they're still bad, but they're closer to Orlando than they are to Detroit next year.
That's the thing too. Like, you guys are bad this year, but you're not Detroit. No, you're not like Houston bad.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I don't know if you guys I don't know if Houston might be in the same spot next year where you guys hit on number 1 pick. You guys are going to be like, like I said, you're more like Orlando than you are than Detroit.
And so I think you work I think you get it like that. And then you go into that 24 where it's like that the following off season where it's like, all right, and this is where things get spicy. It's like, all right, got Wemby, he just won Rookie of the Year, or he had a great rookie year, however you want to look at it. We've got, these other guys on the roster. We signed Nas. We've got some dudes. We're picking like 6th, 7th. The Raptors were okay. They weren't great. they're like, we got their pick. It's like 11th. So we've got 2 lottery picks. Got this double max cap space. We've got 2 young players. We've got Wemby, and who knows? Like, people forget, like what does life look like next year with Sohan's sophomore season?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there another step there? And it's like, all right, so we've got Wemby, Sohan. We're gonna add 2 more guys to this core thing, and then we got this double max cap space, and it's like, all right, we're ready to roll.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, it's like, all right, let's go spend some money, let's draft some guys, and we're gonna cook. Because then you're talking about, all right, Wemby, Sohan, whoever your 2 favorite fits, whatever, in that draft are at that point. And then you go and it's like, all right, I don't know who's in the 2024 free agency class, but you're just like, all right, we can afford anybody in that class. It's like, all right, we just have to convince them to sign. And like, I also think Wemby will somewhat, if he has a really good rookie year, like that's going to help them attract talent.
Yeah, because people are going to want to play with that talent like that.
Yeah, and so like that helps mitigate, because then all of a sudden it becomes more of a hot spot. It becomes more of a hot spot with no state income tax. You got young talent around you, Hall of Fame head coach. Like, there's lots of pros in the pro column. The con is that you're in a small market, but it's like, yeah, but with that type of talent and just with the way technology is these days, that's not as big of a deal. Like, but yeah, like in that 24 class, like Jaylen Brown's going to be a free agent.
Jaylen Brown, San Antonio.
Yeah. Pascal Siakam's going to be a free agent. Chris Middleton's going to be a free agent.
Those guys feel like Spurs.
Yeah.
They feel like Spurs and all that. But that's an interesting thing and all that. Like I said, and the whole like star thing, I think, he'll go in a small market, but I don't think you're going to worry about that till like your second contract.
Yeah.
You know, that you worry about, all right, I want to be on a bigger platform, a bigger city and all that. But that's down the line. You know,
that's your big names. It's like, yeah, like, let's see. And Jaylen Brown's unrestricted.
Yeah, you can pay him and just give him money.
And so it's just like we can go and drop a bag and
And he's shown that he can. He's obviously a very good player, and he's played in big games and all that. And that's something, you know, that you need, you know, with the young rosters. Got a guy who's played big time minutes, big time games in big time moments.
Yeah,
and who's ready to take over to see if he's the guy. Because he's been second fiddle, and this guy's averaging 26 as being the quote unquote second guy on the team.
Yeah.
You know,
because then you're getting into weird shit, man. Then you're talking about moving like guys like Devin Vassell onto your bench, and like just like this team's gonna be pretty good. It's like this could be really. They still would need a point guard, but like that's where. But you get into the flexibility of the options where it's like you get to 2024. And you have 2 lottery picks, you have Wemby, and it's like, all right, like, and we have all this cap space, like the possibilities are endless. We can do a lot of different things and build this roster however we want to build it. And then you're back in, and then you're kind of looking like an OKC type team in 2 years, where it's like, wow, like, yeah, there is a ton of young talent there. They're not good yet, but once they learn how to win, like, they're going to be a problem. Yeah. So, and that's the thing with adding a vet in that 24 offseason, you can accelerate that process because OKC's having to figure it out organically. Like, you can have someone come in and be like, hey, I've been here, I've done this, I've got one of these. Like, I've got a ring. Or in Jaylen Brown's scenario, it's like I played for an NBA championship. Like, I've won playoff series.
Been an all-star multiple times, all NBA and all that,
I've been there and done everything that we want to do other than win a title. Like, you know, in Siakam's case, it's like I've won a title. Like, I've been there.
Siakam too. Like, Siakam would. I think either one of those options and like a Chris Middleton, you know, to an extent maybe, you know, could be a good fit too. But one of those 2 options, it's especially if you guys if you guys improve significantly enough next season, where like you're in the 30s, and you're like, okay, we just won 32 games, let's just say 34 games, and you know. We get a Jaylen Brown, then we had a couple more pieces. With the West being, you got to think about too. The Warriors are on the decline. This team, and Dallas, we don't know what the hell's going on in Dallas because Kyrie's probably not going to be there next year. So it's Luka and a bunch of guys. Like, there's a lot of teams. We don't know what Utah. Utah may be something. Who knows? The Lakers are up and down. Like,
the Lakers are a time bomb waiting to go into.
Yeah, so the West is. I mean.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, they could very easily be back
in playoffs in a few years.
We could look up in 24, 25, and it's just like, how's this team got 52 wins?
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be like, or go like Utah. But we thought Utah was gonna be garbage this year, and then they just got the right players that just needed an opportunity, right? Because they felt like they got players that were kind of cast off, so like and like were forgotten about, like throwaways, and then like Lauri Markkanen turns into an all-star starter, and Colin Sexton's solid, and they got some pieces now. So it's like, whoa, we got some here. So it's like, and they got Kessler too. It's like the guy who they traded. They got a guy who's a younger version.
Just like that's another one where, like, as a Knicks fan, you have to be like, yeah, no, they just drafted like a defensive player of the year type player in like the 20s.
Yeah, it's just like it's a good position they could be if they get Victor. It could change the whole look of the franchise, and you guys could be right back where you guys usually are. So
I'll transition it it's not much different with Scoot, except you just already have the guard, and it actually works out better because then you can go sign all the Siakams and the Browns and not have to worry about fitting wings in. It's like then it gets you better because the dog is your lead guard. Like the face is your lead guard. Like that's kind of what I want. Like that's why I'm kind of like, yeah, I'd like to land on one, but 2 is okay. Like I'm good.
Good character kid too. Like he's a good family. I just watched this thing on the G League and got great parents, great household. Seems like he has the right head on it, right shoulder on, whatever that's saying.
I'm not even worried about all that. Like
it's but the off stuff is the off. Now we see with a lot of people, like off court is very important. Especially playing in San Antonio and all that, and especially with stuff you guys have, the Primo stuff. You want to make sure you get the right guy who has the right head on the shoulder, and it seems like on top of the talent, you're getting a good kid that could be the face of the franchise, face of the community too, which is huge. So that's get him and someone that I think is going to be an all-star just a few in less than 3 years. Like he's that good of a player.
That's why I'm kind of like, yeah, like. You get him, and then all of a sudden you start talking about wings in that free agency where it's like, oh, yeah, like Siakam fits on a wing or it has a big, whatever you want to do with him. Jaylen Brown can go on a wing.
Jaylen Brown and him would be fun.
Yeah, Middleton can go on a wing. Like, we can do a lot of stuff here, and, like, Scoot's got us, and, like, that's all good. And then you still sign a big, and it's like, all right, like, Nas is fine. Like, Sohan's good at the 4. Like, let's sign a wing, and we'll just kind of do a thing here. And and then you can evaluate moving forward where it's like, all right, maybe Sohan or Nas isn't great next year, and it's like, okay, let's add another let's add another body in the 2024 draft into that big, like let's go add another body in there. Or maybe Vassell is just like, I don't think he's a starting 2 on a championship team. Let's go draft another guard, or let's do both. Let's add a body to the big room and let's add a body to the to the guard room and put someone in there that can compete with Devin that's a lottery pick. Because you have both those picks next year. And so you're just like, it's just like, damn, like, God, it's like they can really just revamp the roster in like 2 to 3 years.
And like I said, you guys you might still be in a chance to get a top 5 pick next year. And I know that the class isn't great, but like you can get some of these intriguing bits. I mean, we've talked about Aaron Bradshaw, in our DMs for a while. Like that could be someone that could be, you added Scoot when you add Aaron Bradshaw next year, that could be intriguing, especially if his shooting develops, Yeah. So like Booker, Ron Holland, like there's some guys next year that if you're in the top 5 that right now consider top 5 picks that can be, you add them next year's draft. Now you're really cooking for the next few years,
Well, and then even if you don't get Scoot, like if the consolation prize, it's like, oh yeah, that sucks. You have to take Dillingham or Wagner next year. It's like, oh no, that's so bad.
And that's my thing, because it's all right. We know life with Wemby could be great. It's going to be great. Life with Scoot is going to be great. But what if there's a possibility that you guys won't get the top 2 pick? What what is life without? What does this team look like without Scoot or Wemby? If you get the third pick, fourth pick, whatever pick, what is this
It's still
team?
cool.
Do you still feel as good, or is there like, oh, like kind of like when we, for instance, when we got the third pick, it kind of felt like deflation. Like it was like, we had our eyes set on Zion, and it was like, oh well, if we don't get Zion, we're gonna get Ja at least. That's the consolation prize was getting an All NBA player with the second pick, who probably obviously he got his stuff, but still like he's played more games than Zion still. But like, and then we end up with RJ Barrett, and he's a cool player, he's a nice player, but he's not what the first two picks are. Do you get that sense from fans and all that if that happens?
For sure.
Even with the development and how you guys do, like it's not like with us, like we don't know
how to handle it. They don't know. It's like I said earlier, like Spurs fans don't understand or how to rebuild. Like they don't understand what it's like. Like
you guys have been spoiled.
I really think that they thought that it was going to be, let's go be the worst team in the year. There's no question that the ping pong balls are going to bounce our way. We're just going to get Wemby and then we'll be fine. And like I don't think they realized how tedious the process was going to be. And so like it's still cool if they land 3, like it's like, or even 4.
You can still get a really good player, and he won't be as
it's
marketable or hype, but it's still like very like you can get an all-star still at 3.
I know, and it's like at 3, it's like if it's Brandon Miller, and it's like all right, like it's like all right, man, like you filled the wing spot, you have to attack.
You might be the best fit too.
I know, like, and you have to attack the Keldon Johnson conversation because he's an undersized wing, which Brandon Miller is not.
6'4", 6'5",
and so like you probably have to move him, but you can move him, and God, maybe you can find your young point guard that way. Like you can go and be like, hey, like we'll throw you Keldon, throw us the young point guard we want.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, like that's a much more complicated scenario. You could still draft your point guard, like if you draft Amon Thompson, like that's an option that comes there.
Amen has intriguing possibilities as a lead guard because his first step is, I'm not even just saying this, Walker. It's one of the quickest first steps I've seen in a long time or ever. And he's such a he glides. It's like he's Zach LaVine, but he's also he's power too. So he's kind of a freaky athlete. It's just like you said, like a lot the shooting. That's the swing thing. If he can figure that out and get it to respectable, that's an all-star.
And it's the finishing too.
And no wear and tear either on his body, because let's be real, he's not playing against the elite. I mean, he's playing against good talent, but it's not as physical at the G League.
No, and it's also the finishing.
I mean, the OT.
Yeah, it's also the finishing though. Like he's got to get better around the rim. Like I think he's got to be better at finishing through contact. We need to turn those contested layups that are missing, and we need to turn those into dunks.
He's got to figure that out. Yeah,
like we've got to finish out some of the finishing stuff. I'm kind of curious what it looks like in a half-court game more than a transition up and down fest.
That's the toughest thing to evaluate with him is in OT, because everything feels like it's just boom, 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 boom in that league.
And so that's the biggest couple things where you're like, oh, like yeah, like there's a lot to like, but like how much of this am I getting if it's if it's a half-court game, which the NBA is like, and so I mean, like I like him. I'd be good with him. But there is stuff to actually.
But I think you might have to wait a little longer for him to see what he has as his full potential. And it could be like, oh my God, like it was worth waiting 3 years.
Yeah.
Where I think with Scoot and Wemby, those guys you're going to see more pop quick.
I don't know why though, and maybe this is just me. Like I weirdly don't have I just have a weird feeling that the Spurs aren't falling past 3. Like just a weird feeling that's just, and maybe I don't know. Maybe
I feel that too. Like I feel like it's gonna be you guys gonna be settled, and like Detroit or Houston's gonna get screwed. I feel like Detroit's gonna get screwed again.
Yeah, and like I just have a weird feeling that like the balls are gonna bounce their way. Like, and I don't know why.
Jordan's gonna sell the team, and they're gonna get the number 1 pick. Watch.
Yeah, I just have a weird feeling that like they're gonna find a way to get they're gonna find a way to land in that top 3, and like the before and after discussion just won't even matter. Like I just kind of have a feeling that that's how it's gonna break. And there's only a 52% chance that I'm right, and like for whatever reason, if I had to bet on it, I'd bet on that side. Like I'd be like, yeah, no, I think I'm winning with that side. Like, as weird as that is to say, I just kind of have a feeling that they're going to land somewhere in the top. And I feel like I'm not the only person who feels that way. Like I'm a fan, so maybe I'm biased, but like seeing the Rafael Barlow tweets too, where he's just like, yeah, no, I like they're going to land Wemby. Like it just feels that way. Like it doesn't feel like they're falling. It feels like Houston or Detroit are falling and they're like bracing for impact, where San Antonio is just kind of like, yeah, like let's roll into this thing and get it going. Like it feels like Houston and Detroit are bracing for impact and they know that it's not going to go well.
This is how they ran their franchises. It just feels like it's going to crash and burn, especially Houston. Yeah, Houston's an absolute dumpster fire.
Right. And that's why I just like
they don't deserve the number 1 pick. We don't deserve it. Or 1, 2. They don't deserve 1 or 2.
No, and that's why I think too. Like I think it's going to be one of those things where like I kind of weirdly just feel like San Antonio is going to land 1 or 2. Going to draft one of those 2 guys. We're going to go. I'm going to get ragingly drunk that night, and it's going to be fun. Like off season is going to be everything is going to be leading to that moment. Summer league is going to be must watch. Like we're not missing a summer league game at that point.
Something. Imagine Orlando gets 1.
Oh, I mean, it's not out of the cards. They're tied for 5th right now. Like that's not crazy. Like that's not way off.
It's really not. It's really not crazy, and that would be interesting. That would be interesting. But do you think there's a scenario where, like, all right, let's say you finish, I don't know, what's the lowest you could finish? 5th, 4th, 5th
in the draft.
In the draft.
In the draft right now, it's 7th.
Oh, so I don't think you guys are full. That would be an intent, unless you guys start winning basketball games. But
nah, and like, well, as far as worst record, they're locked in as the 3rd worst record.
Yeah, because you're 5 ahead of Charlotte. Yeah,
just 5.5 ahead of Charlotte, and
so you guys are locked in the top 3 as far as
they can pass,
right?
They can pass Houston for the 2nd worst record.
Yeah, because you're only 2 back. I think
they're a game and a half back, and Houston still has a game against Detroit and a game against Charlotte. They have like the 2nd easiest schedule in the league for the last 6 games. Like they could easily win a few down the stretch here and bottle it.
Yeah, and Charlotte beat
that would be such poetic. That would be such poetic justice for them to bottle the shit out of that, and then and like bottle it, fall to 3, and then end up picking 7th. That would be poetic
Houston, justice. And we just heard Coach Silas was crying early in the season for all the frustrations and all that. He probably not going to be there next year.
Yeah, the only game the Spurs have a chance at winning is tomorrow night, and they play the Jazz at home tomorrow night. And like that's probably the only game they have a chance at winning for the rest of the year.
Yeah,
and even then, they're 5-point underdogs tomorrow night. So
yeah, you guys should coast and all that. But is there a world where, let's say, you guys fall? Let's say 5th, 6th, that you try to trade back, like talk to Orlando maybe, and be like, hey,
I think there's a world where it's like, hey, let's trust our
4th pick. We'll give you 4th pick. You guys move up and give us your first round picks, both of them. You're not gonna use both of them. Most likely, Orlando's not going to use both of them.
Right, and so you're just like, yeah, like we'll take the picks or whatever, and and move around, and
because you still be able to possibly get 2 top 10 picks, and then you just move back a couple spots and get the 10th pick in that trade. I mean, if you don't feel like the guy is there, especially if you're like 5th in Orlando, let's say Orlando 6th or 7th, you'd be like, right, let's give us 7 and 10, 7 and 11, and we'll give you 5. And is that a scenario where that you think could happen?
I think so. I think they're pretty heavily intent on drafting high this year. Like, I don't know. Like they've been in assets gathering mode, so it wouldn't surprise me if they were at 4. If they were just like, hey, like, give us 7 and 10, we'll move back. You come up.
Like, let's say it goes Victor. Let's say it's Victor, Scoot, Miller, Amen. It's a drop off. It is a drop off after that. So they could be like, damn, those 4 guys were our 4 guys. We feel like those 4 guys were all-star level players. One category 1 players. Category 2 players are good, but we don't know if they're going to be all-stars. I mean, we wouldn't mind them, but at 5, why don't we just try to talk to Orlando and just Let's try to get 2 more picks, and then one of those guys, maybe one of those guys pops, and whatever. If the other guy does it, who cares? We got one of them at least. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's just a thought. I've been thinking about that scenario with those, especially San Antonio.
I think so. I mean, I think it's possible. I think really it's just so hard to tell until the ping pong ball is back.
Yeah, of course. But I'm just saying, like, if that's something that would you be if that's something
I would entertain it, right?
And be like, yo, Walker, would you try to trade back and try to get 2 first-round picks, and we move down a spot, we move to 7, and we get 10 instead of staying at 5, and all the guys we like, the top 4 guys we like, are gone, and now it's between who guys that we don't feel like are at that level, and let's just get 2 of those guys, and who's the better, we'll be cool with that. I think they would entertain that.
I do too, and I don't think it would be a bad decision. Like, I think it would be the type that fans would get pissed off about, but they don't know what they're talking about. So
yeah, because let's say you get 7 and 10, and you end up with like a Taylor Hendricks and like a Jerice Walker, something like that, of that. Well, or like Kason Wallace and Jerice Walker, like I think it's not sexy, but those are 2 good players you can potentially get.
Right, and again, like it's just about building the core. They really need the apex. They
do. Predator. That's why it's important to get, especially for you guys, especially because you guys don't have that on your roster. You don't have a guy that you feel like is going to be a multiple-time All-Star, face of a franchise. You got a lot of good players. Don't get me wrong, a lot of good role players, high-end role players, but you don't got that guy. You don't have that guy potential. Like Detroit still, like they got Cade. He was hurt this year, but he's potentially could be a face of a franchise, an all-star level. Like Houston has Jalen Green. Like that's a mess, but he could be that. He has the talent to do it. You guys don't have that. So you guys are the one that really need to get in at least a top 2, 3. Yeah. Definitely top 3.
You win top 3, it's all good. You get outside the top 3, and that's where conversation.
I think that's where that's why I'd be so scared right now if I was a fan, because
I'm really not. I just told you, like, I feel like it's all going to work out.
I think if you're Houston or Detroit, you're scared because your franchise has been a disaster. But a Spurs fan, I would feel good too.
I feel like we're 49 days out. I feel like we'll get 2 or 3 days out, and I'll be a fucking panic machine. Like I'll just be.
Oh yeah, of course. It's always happens, no matter how good your team's been or not. But when you get in the lottery and you're in the top, and you're one of the worst teams, and especially once it gets crunch time and they do those bottom 3. And then
it'll get. I stream in my house. Like I have Fire Sticks and stuff, so I'll be like 10 seconds behind everybody else.
You'd be like a half.
My phone's gonna be like in the sink. Like it's not even.
Put on Do Not Disturb.
No, yeah, my phone's going in the it's gonna be the lottery will start in 10 minutes, and my phone's going in the microwave. I'm going to.
That's why like draft day. I don't even go on Twitter or anything, because you know how some they would like Shams and all that will be like tell you to pick like a half second. It's like no, I don't want to know anything. Just let's find out.
Yeah. So that's why I'm gonna find out, and I'm just gonna kind of
it's gonna be nerve-wracking. You're gonna be like I said, as a person of experience, you guys don't have this experience. You guys have done the lottery after, but like you haven't had a potential number 1 pick. It's nerve-wracking. Then you get to lottery day, and it's like, because it's still not over. Even when you're in the bottom 3 and they go to commercial, and you're like, oh my god, because I remember draft day for the Knicks. I'm like, oh my god, we're in the top 3. I was happy, like, okay, we made it to the top, because it was like, with our luck, we're gonna get 5th, because we were the Knicks. It's gonna happen, especially after that offseason. Then we get to the 3. I'm like, oh, we're gonna get it. It's gonna happen. And then it's like the guy smiles and he's like, what's the 3rd pick? The New York Knicks, and just like you feel the deflation.
Yeah, it's just
it's gonna be, and like it's gonna be so deflating. Like even like you say you want on top 3 pick is good, but you want 1 or 2. You want 1 or 2. You want one of those big and especially 1. It's deflating. Especially when you see the play. Well, I remember watching the draft and like Zion's there, and he wants to be in New York, and it's like you see his face, like, oh, I'm going, because remember it's Lakers, Knicks, Memphis, like the two biggest markets and the 2 smallest markets, and that's why I don't believe the thing is rigged, because the NBA would have wanted John Zion in New York or LA, not Memphis and New Orleans. So can't tell me it's rigged anymore. That's when I believe that the draft isn't rigged, because they would have rigged it for us in LA. But you're gonna be very nervous. That's gonna be leading up to that. You're gonna be nerve wracked. You're gonna be like, oh, it's here, it's here, and it happens quick too. It's only what a 20-minute show.
Since they've changed it, they've started doing the commercial break at 4, not at 3. Like,
Yeah.
because you move into the top 4.
Yeah, because once they get to the top 3, they have the 3 representatives together, and they do the commercial break. Then they show the 3 representatives, and then the guy does the smiley face and third pick, second, and with the first.
I hate
pick.
the lottery guy. I hate the guy who
smiles too much. I've never forgiven him for that.
I know he smiles.
With the third pick, the New York. I still see that face. It bothers me. That was
it bothers me in 2K. Like it even bothers me.
Yeah, I simulated through it.
No, I sit there and watch it. And I sit there and watch it still, just because it's like a preparation for the real thing. It's like you got to get used to this. Like,
but that's a real thing because you guys haven't gone. This is the first time you had this opportunity since Timmy, and you weren't old enough for that, right? You were young.
I was not born.
You weren't born. See, you weren't even born the last time you guys were a top 3.
Yeah,
this high in the lottery. So like it's going to be nerve-wracking for you and the fan base because yes, you guys have won 5 championships and you had your dynasty, but this is potentially another opportunity to start another one. This is a real opportunity. This is a franchise altering type of draft potentially. So this is a big, and because you guys and Detroit and they're Houston too. This can potentially change, especially if they get Victor. And like this is a guy. The Rockets have won championships once in the mid '90s, and Detroit since the early '90s or whatever. I mean the early '90s, 2000s, 2004 they won it. But this guy can potentially be that, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm very intrigued to see how you guys, and who gets him, who's going to be the one, and all that. But do you have any worries with him? Obviously, there's the health. Besides health, because that's the obvious, right? Because we've never seen a player like we've seen like the big players like Kristaps, and they've had injuries, and we've seen Yao Mings and those type of players, and that's the biggest thing. And we see with Zion and all that. But are there any things that you feel like that you worry about with him on the court? As far as things you don't think they were to translate, or do you like if he's healthy, he's going to be what everyone says? Which I agree. I think everything I see, I'm like, yeah, nobody's gonna block a shot. Yes, he's not as strong, but he's gonna get stronger. Like I've seen guys get strong. You see Giannis. Giannis was skinny like him, and then look at him now. Like, and then I get to that level, but like he's gonna get stronger. So like, yeah, if he's healthy, I think he's a future and all-star MVP type.
I know, player. And like people hate the European players. I've learned this. They don't like.
But they've shown that it's not the same. It's not like when I was growing up 2000s, where like, yo, I don't know if we should take this Nicholas Tilishvili or Darko Milicic guy top 5. Yeah. It's different. We have enough evidence to show that is
but no longer that Americans very much want to cheer for the American players, and so like it's.
You don't think Giannis has changed that though? No. Giannis feels like university love.
I very much think that there are people that genuinely believe Scoot Henderson is a better prospect than Victor Wembanyama. And if you ask them to explain it, most of the time they can't. I've learned that pretty quickly. Like they can go into what he does well, but then when you're like, yeah, but the other guy is a 7'4" guy who handles the ball, shoots threes, and blocks shots, and it's like he's a unicorn. Like when you get into it and you really talk about it, like there's very few people that can really genuinely go in, and like I genuinely think it's because he's American. If Victor Wembanyama had played at
Texas, he'd be
name your favorite college, and he had come out of high school from some high school in Michigan or something. It's like,
but do you think that's just because because everyone's so enthralled with, like, especially with March Madness right now, right? And that's kind of why I feel like the Brandon Miller stuff is going on. But like, do you think it's just strictly a year, like an international thing, or just like non-college? Because it feels like Scoot, people don't really know a lot about Scoot, but like, I don't know if that's
we're trying to bump Brandon Miller over Scoot or whatever. But like, also like the G League thing, and it's interesting because it's done good things for player development, but for player exposure, it hasn't been good. Just my opinion.
Look at Jaden Hardy's a perfect example for me. And if Jaden Hardy goes to Kentucky, he's a first round pick.
Yeah, and
same numbers, first round pick.
Yeah, and so like that's why I'm kind of like I don't.
He's an outlier because he's going to be a top 2 pick regardless.
Scoot's getting the hype, I think, And it's like, yeah, like we did this with Luka too, right? Like we did this thing with Luka where it was like I think Luka and Trae Young was the debate, and then obviously they got traded for one another. But like we did this thing with Luka where like a lot of people were like, oh no, like this Luka guy is not it. Like he shouldn't be this high. Like you can take him in the top 10, but like he's just like he shouldn't be going ahead of certain people. It's like, no, well that wasn't true. Like,
is you think it's because of the soft? People think that's because we
I don't know,
naturally think
man. I really don't know. I don't
last time I checked, I don't think Giannis is soft. I don't think Joker's soft. I don't think Luka's soft.
No,
you know,
no, and like I really don't like. I don't have like I can't put my thumb on it, but it's just like for
no,
whatever.
I know what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I definitely get what you're saying.
For whatever reason, I think that we do that with international players, and so like I think like, and as we get closer, I kind of expect it to get louder because people have to debate stuff. Like they just have to be contrarian.
It has to be because the fact that they're 1-2, it's kind of boring, and that's why like we talked about with Brandon Miller. Like they like let's just.
They're gonna try to
switch it up. Let's just put. Well, we think Brandon Miller is going to be the number 1, 2 pick. It's like
they're gonna try to slide guys ahead of Scoot, and then a lot of other people are gonna be like, "Yeah, actually, I think Scoot's better than Wemby." Like the real conversation.
There's people that say that, but I'm like, there's not a chance in hell, that Scoot is the number 1 pick in the draft. Like there's a better chance of me winning the lottery than Scoot going number 1.
If you went to bet on it, I'll give you a fun fact. If you went to bet on it in Vegas right now, said I want to bet on who's going number 1 overall. I want to bet on Victor Wembanyama.
Can you even do it?
The odds are minus 6,000. He is minus 6,000 to go number 1 overall.
Yeah,
and Scoot is like minus 300 to go second.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's how like that tells you like.
Well, like remember last year, like the odds changed overnight. Remember, because I remember I was working,
but it was never like.
And I was looking at, but I'm just saying, like the odds change and all that. It's just crazy how it changes, but like it's not going to change the way it did last year, where like overnight it's like, yo, Paolo's going.
No, and like Paolo was like minus 400.
Yeah,
like,
no, I'm just saying, but like it's because like last year it changed and like, oh, we knew Paolo's going to go number 1 because the odds changed. It's not going to happen in this case.
Yeah,
Victor is going to be the number 1 pick. Yes. Yeah. Will Scoot maybe be a better player down the line? Maybe. He could be down the rank to design. Probably not. I don't think so. I think you're taking a player in Victor that's, yes, there's a lot of hype, but I think he's that good. And you're going to take someone who's going to change your franchise financially for an owner. This is ka-ching. Because like we spoke before, top 10 in jersey sales the minute he's drafted. The minute number 1 pick, Spurs, Houston, Detroit, that jersey's that's going to be the hottest jersey.
Yep, the Victor Wembanyama Fiesta jersey is off the rack.
Yeah, it's off the rack. It's a top 10 jersey and all that, and it's going to be this. I think he's worth the hype and all that. And but if you get 2, you get Scoot, it's going to be you're going to get a great player too. So the Spurs are in different. They haven't been in this situation since Tim Duncan and all that, and we saw how that went. And obviously it's a different player and all different era and all that, but we saw that the change he made for that. You guys went from 20 wins to a 50 win team, 50 plus win team. So we don't know if he's going to be that effect, but he's going to make some type of effect and it's going to be positive. So it's going to be interesting to see. But Walker, appreciate you coming on the show, bro. It's going to be interesting times. I know you're going to be nervous when we'll definitely have you back on to talk more Spurs and all that as we get closer and all that. But tell the people where they can find you before we sign off.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at WalkerBailey818. Check out everything footballnetwork.com. Lots of stuff going on there. We're kind of getting into spring practice for football now, so I think Mo and I are about to kick Field Stormers back up and get back into that and kind of start looking at next season. I think we're going to try to do some interview stuff as well. So, just between all those things, I think that covers it all, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As Walker Bailey, I'm Chris LeBron, Off the Ball Podcast. Another great episode. We're going to have a lot more draft stuff coming up in the pipeline. So follow me at Off the Ball Pod. Follow the network, OTB_network on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go to offtheballnetwork.com. Support the sponsor, SeatGeek. $20 off. Use all caps Off the Ball Network for the promo code for $20 off. And